folks, welcome back to South Africa. This is Chris once again. Hello, folks, and welcome back once again to Answer the Question with Rob Hutchinson and Chris Wyatt, the Wise Bros, as we've been called by some folks. I think it's probably better than those old toppies, you know. How's it going, Rob?
Oh, great. Fantastic. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm well. Happy New Year to you and yours.
Yeah, and to you too. It's certainly been an eventful one here. We can definitely say that. Great start to the year.
Well, you know, it's not as if we have to get together and collaborate on what topics we're going to need to drum up for each week because South Africa just keeps us so busy. But before we get to that, let me just wrap up. I think I'm actually a day off because it's supposed to start on Christmas Day, but I think I must miscounted. But today is the 6th of January. It is the Orthodox Christmas, and it is also for Ethiopians celebrating Christmas today and the 12 days of Christmas. You can't see it on the screen. Let me get rid of the screen there because for those who don't know, it's also the anniversary of the so-called insurrection took place in January last year here in the States. So my virtual background is the U.S. Constitution. So let me take it off there because I want people to be able to see the 12 days of Christmas. Last one. And Rob, I'm not serenading you. I just do this each day. So don't feel special. But and also don't run. If you have any cats, don't let them in the room. They'll probably squeal when they hear me sing. But it's 12 drummers drumming. So let's see what we have. We have white, brown, and black chocolate. Oh, there you go. We've got black chocolate, dark chocolate on the last day. So, all right. So that's the last of the sweets. So it's 12 drummers drumming, 11 pipers piping, 10 lords a leaping, 9 ladies dancing, 8 maids a milking, 7 swans a swimming, 6 geese a laying, 5 golden rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree. Merry Christmas, Rob.
And to you.
Well, there you go.
I've just been serenaded. Yay.
There you go. You can put that on your CV. I'm sure that'll be impressive.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, okay. Let's hopefully don't have trouble with your mic this week, which was being dodgy last week.
It was. Hopefully it's all been sorted out. I think it was my fault actually. I had something. I had 2 mics on at the same time. One was canceling the other one out.
No, I'm with you. That's happened to me before. In fact, the first time I went live on the radio on my program, what we did that started in June last year with WSMN in Nashville, New Hampshire. My software had updated for my streaming software, and but I wasn't even in that. So I'd fixed that, but then they were using StreamYards or something like that, and it default changed the setting from this microphone, which is dead sexy. This HyperX, man. This thing's amazing. Look at that. Oh, yeah, I love it. Anyway, yeah. So they went from this to the webcam microphone, which is, a meter away from me, and it's picking up everything from all over. And so anyway, they're like, oh, your mic's terrible. I'm like, oh man, it's fine. It's looking good here. I unplugged it. I rebooted, and it wasn't my mic. It was, and I finally went to the web browser and said, wait a second, that's the wrong mic setting. But rookie mistake, but not really. It's just kind of done in by the tech there. But anyway, so what you're talking about with the microphone in the arm, we have a phrase for that. We call it operator timing and headspace. And when you kind of make a silly mistake.
Operator timing and headspace. The problem sits between the chair and the computer.
Well, it sits between the gray space, operator timing and headspace. The neurons aren't matching at the same. They're not firing. It's like a 3-stroke engine, which only 2 cylinders are firing.
A 3-stroke engine.
Oh yeah, no, they have those in East Germany. The Trabi was a 3-stroke engine. Yeah.
Oh wow! I
didn't
know that.
It's like a snow blower, 3-stroke engine, 3 cylinders.
That's great. I love a 2-stroke, but
yeah. It's the wonders of communism. That's what they brought us, was the Trabant and the Wartburg.
Exactly, and the Lada.
The Lada, yeah. Let's not forget that. Have we decided on our spirit animal? I thought we decided on an elephant, at least for me. I don't know. Do you have a spirit animal there, Rob? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, elephant seems a good one. But
right.
I saw a fantastic comment. There was the bearded dragon.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I like that one. That was
great.
pretty good. Yeah, maybe people think we're Welsh. We start using dragons as our spirit animal.
Oh, very true. Very true. Yeah. Well, mind you, the bearded dragon, they're not very cuddly, are they?
No, they're not. They're not. And also, if we're going to start using mythical creatures, then, hey, we're just like the politicians in South Africa and America. We're just making stuff up as we go.
Absolutely.
All right, Rob, let's start with the obvious one here. All right, I'll frame it. and then you can answer the question, okay? So here we go. Apparently, a 49-year-old vagrant who is homeless and appears to either be intoxicated or has mental acuity challenges. And maybe, to be fair, he was just stunned by all these cameras. That might be what it was. But whatever the case is, the brilliant mastermind who was captured with explosives and a laptop stolen from the building entered the Parliament building at approximately 2 a.m., captured on closed-circuit television by the camera, but not by the police because they weren't watching the cameras. Oh, yes, and there was no security guards because Parliament couldn't afford overtime. We've been informed by Patricia DeLille, the minister responsible, that the water valves for the sprinkler system had been turned off in December. Now, no explanation given, but some reliable sources have told me it was because there was a fire drill, which is acceptable. You don't want that thing to turn on when you're doing a fire drill. I don't know that that'd be factual. I'm just sharing with you what some sources have told me. But we do know for a fact that she said they were turned off. And for people that don't think that you can't investigate that, fire inspectors can, in fact, determine that depending on the damage. Anyway, so some mastermind, this brilliant guy who sleeps at the cathedral just down the street from the Parliament building, is the mastermind behind destroying this building. At least R1 billion in damage, at least R1 billion, probably more. I love how the news media, they don't even have the time to get the editors to do their job. The original architect for this Parliament building, yeah, it was built in 1884. Did you dig him up? No, the architect for the 1988 addition to the Parliament facility. Anyway, so, all right, there's the frame. There it is. So we've got this guy, Zandile, which I thought was a girl's name, but Zandile Christmas Mafe. He is the mastermind behind torching the Parliament. So answer the question, Rob. Frame up, or is he a mastermind? Or we just don't know?
Short answer, frame up. Without a doubt. I think anybody with an IQ above 60 can see that. There's no doubt about that. When they started, have you seen the latest news doing the rounds on Twitter about him? That he's a highly trained.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. He's a highly trained intelligence operative and all that stuff. People shared that with me, and while I appreciate them sharing that with me, I don't just put anything on my channel. It's got to have some substantiation to it. I deal in facts, and so, the moment you start doing that conspiracy stuff and you have no basis to support your argument, you become kind of a nutter, and so I try to avoid that.
No, definitely. It's without a doubt a cover-up. I mean, it's got all the hallmarks of a false flag operation, in my opinion. Everything's there. It's what I'm struggling with, though, is the motive.
Yeah.
What is behind it? Why would let's put the individual aside. It's definitely not him. Why would an individual do this, or a group of individuals do that? What do they stand to gain from it? And for the life of me, I can't get to that point. I don't know if you have any suggestions there. What could be?
there's two suggestions.
What building was actually burnt there? It was the
National Assembly. That's the building.
National Assembly itself.
Yeah, it's gone.
Council of Provinces.
Yeah, the Council of Provinces building is still there, if I understand correctly. But National Assembly building itself is actually one torched. One of our viewers is a firefighter whose spouse lives in Cape Town. He works in Gauteng. He flies back and forth frequently, and he's had a rather extended vacation as a firefighter, about 6 weeks. He hasn't had that kind of time off in over 10 years. So he was in Cape Town and was watching this fire unfold. Coincidentally, when the April fire in the mother city took place, which turned out to be arson, and everybody claimed it was, but we didn't know that, so I didn't say that until we got the facts. But when that took place and the media weren't even covering it, I covered it live. He was in Cape Town when the fire started, and he flew back to Gauteng, and then he said, look, and I asked him if he'd come on the air. He said, well, I'm about to get on a plane, but I'll be but he flew back 2 hours to Gauteng, got home, came on. I was still broadcasting about the fire that day. It was evening already. And so he gave me a first-person account of what he saw within like 150 meters of the fire, lapping at the homes in the neighborhood that he was in. But anyway, yeah, so the two things were put forward right away, both of which are just total nonsense. And common sense, and any good analyst will look at this and go, well, that doesn't make sense. First off, was it, it's very suspicious that this. Now, I said this in a sarcastic manner in my video, so if anybody tries to call me on it. But, the Zonda Commission's about to deliver its report. Now they won't be able to deliver it. Yeah, they will. It's digital. You can deliver it to me here at home. I have it. I have 867 pages or whatever it is, and I've been using it for sleep time. It helps me fall asleep. So yeah, that's not a reason for the fire. The next one is, now we can move the Parliament to Pretoria. Well, you could have moved the Parliament to Pretoria without destroying the building, so it's not that either. Here's the thing.
I must admit that was my first thought, though, is because the ANC have been talking about moving Parliament to Pretoria for quite some time.
Yeah.
So my first thought was, they've been talking about this. They've been pushing quite hard. They brought it up a few weeks ago again, and then suddenly it burns. But then again, I couldn't figure out the motivation behind it.
Yeah, but so. What's interesting is when you talk about moving to Pretoria is that, of course, we see the racist nonsense from Dudu Zuma, his daughter, and also from Floyd Shivambu, Mr. VBS Venda Bank scandal, stealing from poor black people. But anyway, so we see racist comments from them about what a beautiful fire, not coincidence. It's time to move the capital. And so Dudu Zuma, who talks about moving it and getting before the settlers came and established themselves in Western Cape and brought all our problems here. Presumably talking about black Africans' problems. I assume she's talking about, or maybe Zulu, I don't know. But anyway, she says, move it to PTA. Okay, so Pretoria is PTA. It's named after Andreas Pretorius, a Trekboer, who was a founder of the Transvaal Republic. And so you're trying to get away from the settlers, yet you call it the settler name where you want to have your... It's just the incongruities and the stupidity in their nonsense. But as far as neither one of those work. So this is my analysis thus far, and I think I'm spot on as far as culpability here. Now, I don't think that this guy is innocent or guilty. I don't know what's going on. He sure looks like a fall guy, a scapegoat, and I said that right away. Ronaldo Jose says he's innocent. I have no evidence he's innocent. I also have no evidence of his guilt. What I can say is that he doesn't look like he's bright enough to rub two sticks together, let alone be a mastermind. Also, if he was caught on camera at 2 a.m., what was he doing in the building? That hasn't been shared with us, the footage. We don't know what he was doing. Was he sleeping? Okay, maybe a noise startled him. He got up and left. Was he lighting a fire to cook his food with charcoal inside the building? Who knows? It's summertime. It's not cold. That doesn't make any sense. But over 3 hours he was in the building. What was going on? That's a question needs to be answered. So here's the other thing about this. Explosives. That's when we start talking about a false flag operation. He has explosives. Where does a homeless vagrant get explosives from sleeping outside a cathedral? He can't even find a place to live. He can't even find a tin shack that people live in the Cape Flats where they tack together tin and little pieces of wood and live in a hovel. He can't manage that. He's sleeping on the streets. So there's the whole thing. Now, here's the problem. This is the ineptitude of these clowns that do these false flag operations, just like in D.C. It's so easy to refute their nonsense. First off, if you're going to frame the guy, don't tell us that there's 3 hours of footage of him in the building. Don't tell us he had a bag full of explosives and he had a laptop. People ask me, why would he have a laptop? I said, well, don't you know in Cape Town, the mother city, the city has put, mains out on the street where people just go to a pole and plug in all their devices to recharge their mobile phones? Because it's unfair. The poor ought to have mobile phones too. Anyway,
free Wi-Fi for all.
Exactly.
If you don't have a laptop to connect to the free Wi-Fi, we'll supply one for you.
Well, it's a human right. Don't you know, Rob? It's a human right. Anyway, yeah, so the whole thing is but here's my analysis. Okay, the culpability lies with the bureaucracy, with the state, and with the ruling party. Now, I castigate and criticize the Democratic Alliance because they came out, John Steenhuisen and Natasha Mazzone. I saw Natasha Mazzone the day before being interviewed on TV. She was all heartbroken. I've come here every day for 12 years and worked in this building, and this is a tragic loss. No issue with that. I do have an issue with the fact that she's been in the parliament for 12 years. Move on. Let someone else do it. It's not permanent political class. I'm sick of these people that stay there forever. That's the first point. Second point is the next day she's out there. She's out there with John Steenhuisen and other members, all women, a couple women of color and all women except for Steenhuisen standing out there. Got a virtue signal. That's the DA. So they're out there standing in front of the parliament. There were clear signs of this lack of security. Really? I'm sorry. Let me go back through Natasha Mazzone's Twitter feed and John Steen and the DA web. I don't see anything talking about a lack of security. So here's who's culpable. First off, that's just grandstanding. And so I called out the DA for that. If they don't like it, they can get over it. Because if there was clear evidence, where were you? Why weren't you exposing it to people, telling people that one of the most important pieces of critical infrastructure in the country was unguarded and unprotected? And not for 5 minutes, not for 5 days, not for 5 months, but for 6.5 years since Zelda Holtzapfel was suspended in 2015 and then sacked in 2017. 6.5 years without a head of security. No head of security at the parliament for 6.5 years. No guards on duty because the government doesn't have money to pay overtime on the weekend. Are you high? The billions of PPE equipment stolen by freaking, by Zwedium Mkhize himself would cover that. They can't pay guards. Where were the cops who were supposed to be monitoring the CCTV? That's not happening. Why were the valves shut off and no supervisor or leader ever went back to check that the system was functioning? All of this smacks of incompetence, ineptitude, and it's just a metaphor for the governance of the African National Congress. What say you?
I totally agree. You cannot get away from the fact that it's definitely incompetence, and incompetence on Patricia de Lille's on her shoulders, without a doubt. And she's the one who was responsible for state infrastructure, is she not?
Yep.
Yet she's the first one to blame everyone else, and she came up with the story that the sprinklers were working, but they'd been switched off. I found that very, very suspicious as well. And the question is, if it was this homeless guy or a homeless guy, how did he start this fire? That was an immense fire, absolutely immense fire. That doesn't start from just trying to keep yourself warm or burning something inside, and he wouldn't do that anyway. If he's inside, why does he have to light a fire? Doesn't make any sense. It's certainly not cold in Joburg or in Cape Town at that time.
No. It's summertime.
Or in Slipper. Exactly. So what's the excuse behind that? It was a deliberate act, and it was done in a very strategic way, I believe. And that fire literally took off. Apparently, the fire department was there within
6 minutes. 6 minutes being called, but we don't know how long the blaze was going before. But we don't know how long it was before the fire started. They were actually called. That's not been disclosed yet. So it might have been 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. If the water valves were shut off, I wouldn't be surprised to find the fire alarms were also shut off.
Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt, and that immediately screams of inside action there. Who knew where the switch was to switch it off? First of all, who knew where the tap or the main switch to switch the sprinklers off was?
Yeah, because it's just available. It's available to the public. I mean, you and I know where to shut the water valves off, right? We could just walk in now. Yeah, right.
There's a big sign there that says
water mains. Shut this off in case of fire.
Exactly. Do not pull this lever. Push it up. Exactly.
Oh my goodness!
Don't you love the fact that Cyril Ramaphosa actually admitted that at least we have one working city in South Africa and everything works fine.
That was hilarious.
Wow.
It just shows you how stupid these people are. I mean, he just doesn't realize. But then the ANC goes true to form the next day after Jordan Hill Lewis, whom I've never had a chance to interview yet. I'd like to interview him, but Jordan Hill Lewis comes out and it offers City of Cape Town facilities. And what is the ANC Executive Committee going to do? We are not going to take this camouflage political move. We'll find our own facilities. Let me translate that for my audience. We will award a fraudulent, broad-based black economic empowerment contract with no tender process because of the urgency to some fictitious company to reward our cadres to provide a circus tent where we can all stand in the rain for Parliament.
Exactly. And the same goes for the billion rand bill or the billion rand that it's going to take to fix it, of which Patricia de Lille again will be in charge of to rebuild that infrastructure. So again, we've got to worry. Will it be another fence? Remember, she built that so-called fence up there for 30 million or whatever it was. Yeah. Now she's going to have $1 billion to work with. First of all, where's that money going to come from?
It doesn't exist. The country's bankrupt.
No. Is there insurance on that building? I doubt it.
No.
I doubt it. No. So that's going to be
and even if there is insurance company would be able to get out of paying the claim. There was negligence here, which contributed to the destruction. Yeah, so insurance companies shouldn't be held responsible if there is insurance because of the negligence here.
Oh, I sense a new amendment bill coming up, which tells insurance companies that they have to pay out regardless.
Well, it's okay. They're whining about or complaining about your sound again, saying it's too low. Maybe just Rob's a soft-spoken guy. I mean, my levels are coming. You're hitting the red when you talk, so I'm a little puzzled by that.
Can't be me.
Yeah,
can't be me.
Turn your volume up, folks. Maybe I'm yelling. That's the problem.
One of us is yelling. Yeah. Is that better? Let us know.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit. We're gonna have to tape the mic to your head there, like you're doing a football broadcast or something like that.
Move it there.
Kevin Nicklin, DK saying your sound is perfect. Okay, I thought so, but just leave it there. We're good with that. But a moment ago, DK said Chris has stated all the facts and questions. Not much else to state. Yeah, exactly. Until we know more information, not much else to state. But claiming that that Zandile Christmas Mafe is innocent, I think is a step too far. Making the argument that it looks like he's a stooge or a patsy is a legitimate argument to make, I think. But we don't know. We weren't there. We don't know what's going on. And what the government tells us, I mean, you have to, can you even trust that? I don't think we can. That's the problem. That's why people speculate.
No, definitely can't. And you can also look at the tweets by the Zoomers and the EFF. They're just your typical, I want to say it out loud here, they're a typical terrorist organization who they'll claim responsibility for anything that gets put out. Anything gets put out to make them look famous. That's all it is. So I wouldn't even look at them as to be the alleged perpetrators at all or instigators of this. No. Not at all.
I actually don't think the EFF are bright enough to actually have instigated this.
no, definitely not. Or brave enough to be dead honest. They're not that brave. So I don't think they're brave at all. To be honest, they're just opportunists.
No, they're not. I mean, in the face of it's and any time that disciplined professional security forces are present, people like this just melt away. I mean, not even disciplined security forces, but relative discipline. Look at Brockenfell on the 20th of November, right? When some idiot judge in the Western Cape authorized 100 EFF members to protest against fake racism in a Brockenfell school. Oh, they don't have any black teachers. Well, yeah, because they got like 6 black students because it's a local school that people send their kids to, and it's predominantly populated by colored and white folks. So most of the kids are colored and white. So what's your beef? I don't hear anyone whining about a lack of white teachers in the Eastern Cape or in KwaZulu-Natal. No one's complaining about how come there's no whites out here teaching Zulu. There's no Indians out here teaching Zulu. Well, there's lots of Indians in KZN. Why can't they be teaching Zulu? Anyway, so 3,000 to 5,000 of them show up with pungas and golf clubs and knob carries, and they're toying like they're an impy marching on the school. And the cops turn one water can on them. They run like cockroaches. It was hilarious.
It was brilliant. Not only was it a water cannon, but the water was dyed blue in DA territory. It was the most ironic thing I've ever seen. Paint the red jerseys blue. It was hilarious, absolutely hilarious, and well done for whoever thought of that one.
No, that was brilliant. That was something else. But no one ever talks about the fact that the EFF were authorized 100 protesters. That's what the judge said, 100. And 3,000 to 5,000 people showed up. I couldn't get an accurate estimate because I couldn't see all of the crowd at once because the angles, there was around a curve in the street. So my estimate was 3,000 to 5,000, but it was clearly 3,000 people at least. And they weren't protesters. They were violent thugs. You don't bring a golf club and a panga or a knob carry to a frickin' demonstration. I mean, I just showed footage of Capitol Hill on the 5th or 6th of January last year. No pangas, no knob carries, mostly because we don't have knob carries, but we do have pangas. They're called machetes. and no golf clubs. Not a single golf club used, And so, anyway.
That's surprising. That's surprising.
Well, I mean, the mall's a great place to hit a golf ball. It's really long and straight, as long as you don't slice.
Absolutely. And you might just get a hole in one.
Possibly. But I'll tell you this mastermind. Well, this is, so that's how we start the year off. The parliament burns down. That's interesting start to the year.
It is not just parliament, but not just parliament burning, but it seems to be burning in other areas as well with the Zonda commission or the Zonda report.
That's what we're coming to next.
Exactly. My question for you.
Okay.
Answer the question. The Zonda commission and the report took a hell of a long time, as we all know, with hundreds of people interviewed and over R1 billion spent on this report. Do you think it was worth it?
In the aggregate, yes. In order to restore any degree of confidence in governance in South Africa, it was necessary, even if it's just virtue signaling, to go through this. Let me explain why. Confidence in South Africa's government is so low that even Americans don't trust the government. Not our government, your government. No, but seriously, there is so much corruption, and even already people are forgetting the timeline of this event. This commission didn't form until 2018. I hear people talking about a decade ago that this thing was formed. It's been running for 7 years. That's not true. This commission was formed in 2018. It was chartered to do this. Zonda was picked to do it, and he went off. And so it's been almost 4 years. R1 billion. Okay. I have no problem with that expenditure if, in fact, a cogent report is produced, which comes with an executive summary of what did and didn't happen, a list of conclusions based on the testimony, the evidence that they've seen, and recommendations if they lead to anything improvement. Now, the problem I have with this, of course, is that this is in the hands of the ruling party, which is a RICO operation. They are a racketeering organization masquerading as a political party. They are a disgrace to the liberation struggle. They are an absolute disgrace to the liberation struggle. They have gone from being a party with a number of people who are committed to multiracial capitalist society and the improvement of life of all South Africans to a it's our turn to eat, race hustling bunch of shysters, and it's really disappointing. So this report in their hands doesn't engender much confidence, but it will expose for the world, I hope and I believe in a cogent fashion, the crimes that were committed, the pervasive crimes, and how the ANC was part and parcel of this. Now, I don't think it's going to change election outcomes, and I seriously doubt it's going to lead to any real prosecutions. I predict the only people being indicted and possibly going to trial, it'll take years, but going to trial will be Zuma acolytes. That's it. Especially if he dies in the near term. The guy's an octogenarian. If he's off the stage, then they'll go after them with a fervor. But there'll be nobody in Ramaphosa's camp or any other part of the ANC that ever comes under charges. Ramaphosa himself has a clear conflict of interest. He should not have access to this report except as a member of the general public. Certainly not as the person it's delivered to. I thought that was highly inappropriate, and the court should have intervened and said, no, this can't be the case. It should be presented to the legislature first, not to the president. Yes, I know the ANC has a majority in the legislature, but the legislature is full of other political parties who can bring light and transparency rather than opaqueness to this. So I think it was worth it. I think it was necessary. I don't have much hope that criminals are going to be prosecuted. Hopefully, some of the people that work in the International Monetary Fund, the African Development Bank, the World Bank, even the BRICS Bank, and the Chinese will read this and go, oh, wait a second. I'm not giving these people my money. Look where it goes, straight into their pockets. Now, some of them do that willingly and knowing that. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I don't think it's going to lead to any changes. You know, we hear, well, now this is in the hands of the government. We'll make the change. No, you're not going to make any changes. You're just a thieving RICO organization.
Yeah, and on that, I absolutely agree with you. Well, to answer that question, I don't think it was worth R1 billion, to be dead honest, because for the simple fact that we know that nothing is going to come of it. So it's R1 billion wasted. Everybody expected a strong outcome. All the report and all the commission did was confirm what we already suspected, and I think most of us more than suspected it. Deep down, we knew what the actual truth was and who the perpetrators and players were, and we had plenty of information from that, from investigative journalists and other whistleblowers that had come forward before the commission, even from the public protector, from Tuli Madonsela, from her report, we knew what was going on. So I think spending R1 billion on that commission, when we know there's no one's going to be taken to task at all, no one ever, it's just going to be hands going to be kicked down the road and so on, then no, I don't think it was worth it. It is absolutely necessary that we do establish the truth, exactly what happened, but all I can see coming from this is another few billion being spent on attempted prosecution, further individual investigation, and so on. No, but will it recover the money? Will it recover the funds? That
money's gone. Yeah,
of course, none of that money will ever come back to South Africa. So at the end of the day, it is just another burden that has been placed on taxpayers, because someone's got to foot that bill, and it's R1 billion that could have been perhaps spent
repair the parliament.
Better. Exactly. Well, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Strange coincidence between expenditure there, but it's R1 billion that could have been spent better.
I get your point, Rob. It's a fair point that the money was wasted. What I would argue is that we have a judicial commission here, which is evidentiary in nature, which has heard witness testimony. So if and when anyone makes an effort to hold a trial against those accused, you're not going to have to investigate. You're not going to have to do discovery. The information's there. This report is evidentiary. It can be presented as prima facie evidence against the culprits. And there is something of great value there. Whether it should have been R1 billion, who knows? Now, people make the same discussion or make the same topic when they come back to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. A lot of people are angry about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission on both sides of the political aisle, left and right. It was a whitewash. It covered up. Desmond Tutu was complicit in it. He let the murdering white racists get away with their crimes. Then others saying they let it's all over the place. What I would say about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as an outsider is that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is held up around the world as the gold standard on doing it. I would disagree. It's not the gold standard. What I would say is that I think that the concept of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was a necessary, I don't want to say evil. It wasn't evil, hopefully a good, but a necessary function for South African society, which was raw in 1990s, early 1990s. Society was raw. I think that the commission was not impartial. I mean, we've seen that white murderers and criminals are given life sentences, and the people who murdered people like Amy Beale who murdered her, and they were given the shield of political violence when it wasn't political violence. They were just thugs who drug her from her car in the Cape Flats and beat her to death as she begged for her life, and they laughed about it on trial. They were given a pardon and out of jail after just a couple of years. Meanwhile, the guy that killed Chris Hani is still in prison. He's still in prison. Now, if you're going to have this, you need to be balanced. It wasn't balanced in any way. Also, the crimes of the ANC at Quattro were not really delved into by the TRC, in my view. The crimes of the Pan-African Congress were not really delved into. And honestly, there was more they could have done with the secret police and what the state structures did. That said, I still think it was a worthwhile exercise because of the raw state of civil relations in 1994 and 1995, and that it was a necessary step, even if it was window dressing, to help try to repair civil society. A lot of people complain about it. A lot of money was spent at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I think in the end, it was a worthwhile venture. I just don't agree with the outcomes of it, and I think there's a lot to be desired, but I think it was worthwhile. Rob, what say you?
Yeah, no, I agree on that point as well. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission was more of a healing process, an emotional healing process.
Right, not a justice process.
No, not a justice process at all. A lot of people wanted explanation for what was done, for the reasoning behind why they did what they did, and so on. Whereas these commissions, and we've seen a lot of commissions lately in South Africa. If anything goes wrong, let's launch a commission and avoid the court process for a couple of years. So that's the way I view it. But although the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was definitely about that healing process, these commissions, and especially the Zonda Commission, was not that at all.
Yeah.
It was almost like a trial to seek evidence. And I agree with what you say there. It does precede the evidence and discovery of any case, which is good. And it can be used in a court case. But the question is,
will there be a court case?
Will there be a court case, yeah.
Maybe against Ace Magashule.
Maybe. Look, there's got to be a fall guy or several fall guys.
Yeah.
No doubts about that. So there again, it might be a problem. It might become a bit of an internal political thing towards, as we get closer to the ANC conference or the elective conference. I've no doubt Ramaphosa is going to hold on to that report quite tightly in several new renditions of it, and probably use some of the findings in that against any opponents that might present themselves, as he tries to retain power. His presidency of the ANC is definitely on the pipeline.
It's on the fence. It's on the knife's edge. Yeah. Well, speaking of which, exactly. Now the conference is on the 10th, if I'm not mistaken, January. Is it in Polokwane this year? Where's it at? I think it's in.
I'm not too sure at that.
I think it's in Polokwane. Yeah. But if it's in Polokwane, it brings back memories of what I call the Polokwane massacre, in which a sitting president of South Africa is unseated by Zuma and his acolytes in 2008, was it? At Polokwane? I call that the Polokwane massacre.
Yeah. That's it. It's amazing what happens in that. It's definitely almost like a mafia fight for territory.
It is, no doubt about it. And that's the thing I've said all along, Rob, is when Ramaphosa took over. Now, of course, I was at the African Union when the ANC got rid of someone they didn't want to have around, and they broke the unwritten rules of the African Union that hegemons don't get to be the chairperson of the commission. And so the South Africa threw its weight around, which really pissed off a lot of African states. Nigeria, Algeria in particular, were very angry about the way that South Africa threw their weight around to try to get that chairperson. And it was all about getting rid of NDZ. They're just trying to ship her elsewhere. So they sent her there. And I can tell you with no qualms whatsoever that in my time in Addis Ababa, the thoroughly least popular person in the city of Addis Ababa was Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Nobody associated with her. Nobody liked her. She was aloof. She was disconnected. She was unpopular. She was, anyway. So what I could say about that from having interacted with her in Addis at the African Union is that it's still shocking, and it says a lot about the patronage system that she had support, and that Cyril Ramaphosa won election as president of the African National Congress by a mere 70 votes. So 36 people voting out of like 4,800, whatever the total votes are in the committee. 36 people voting the other direction, and Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't become the president of South Africa, and we have NDZ for the past couple of years. He has never been a strong president. He has, from the outset, filled his cabinet full of Zuma proteges, and that's left him. That's because he had no choice, because he had to do it to keep the party together, to keep the support. Otherwise, he could have embarrassingly faced a vote of no confidence pretty quickly out of the gate. Now, what happens? We'll see. All things considered, this guy has been a bigger disaster president, in my view, than Zuma. At least Zuma, we knew he was stealing. We could see him stealing, and we knew that's what it's all about. But he wasn't. He didn't use race the way that Ramaphosa used race to divide society. He actually reached out to Afrikaner groups on many occasions. Zuma did, which is interesting. But I think that Ramaphosa has been the worst president post-apartheid South Africa, without doubt, in my view. What say you?
I have to agree once again. Absolutely agree with you. I've had, as you know, I've had my inside stint into politics. I've got a bit of inside information from there, and that came from Terra Lekota. And do you remember when Lekota stood up in Parliament and accused him, or Ramaphosa, of betraying everyone, right? And it was the reason that Lekota and a few others actually went into Robben Island, was because Ramaphosa ratted them out. Well, Ramaphosa denied that. So, I heard it from the horse's mouth that it was actually true. And so, there's still debate about that, and we'll let them fight that out as to whether who's correct or not. But that's a rather interesting insight into Ramaphosa's character, which is played out throughout his political career. He's known as the president with a forked tongue. He'll say one thing to one group to please them, and then say the exact opposite to another group on the same topic to please them. So, who is the real Ramaphosa? What is the truth behind this man? Why does he seem to not have any clout or any impact in his decision making? I know that he can't make decisions by himself. It's up to the NEC to do that, and he's just a spokesperson for the NEC. But still, he was absolutely silent and absent as a deputy president.
Yep.
And he seems to be the same fence sitter on major issues as the president. That's not what we need in South Africa right now.
Well,
we need someone to take real decisive action and not care what the consequences thereof.
I think emblematic of this is the insurrection internally in the ANC that unfolded in July in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng, which is eminently predictable. In fact, go back and watch my videos. I predicted violence on a massive scale on the 29th of June when the Constitutional Court convicted him of contempt of court. I said when he's arrested or if he turns himself in, there will be violence by his supporters. Now, I didn't predict 100,000 people would loot in KZN. That definitely wasn't something I predicted, but what's emblematic of his tenure and his lack of leadership and his complete disconnect from reality is that he's talking about society, and they're focusing on something totally unrelated, while in the background there's people burning and looting all over, and he takes almost 3 days before he even addresses the violence unfolding. People already dead, hundreds of people already dead, critical infrastructure destroyed in KwaZulu-Natal, black businesses obliterated in Soweto, and he is just completely detached. And then he shows up in his BMW brigade, like the conquering hero, picking up a shovel and picking up ashes. This is just all virtue signaling, typical political stuff. I think if you take off the mask, there's Joe Biden underneath. For Joe Biden, if you take off the mask, there's Boris Johnson underneath. If you take off the mask, Boris Johnson, there's Justin Trudeau. And then there's Jacinda Ardern and Scott Morrison. They're all of the same cloth. They're frauds. They're not leaders. They're not leaders, or their countries wouldn't be in flames.
It's another episode of Scooby Doo, isn't it?
Hey,
it's
Scooby Dooby Doo, where are you? Hey, Shaggy, hey, Shaggy.
That's exactly what it is, though. It's exactly, they all play by the same playbook. They all say the same things. There's a script that goes around between all the like-minded pieces. And if anybody who thinks Cyril Ramaphosa is just a puppet, I have to agree with you. He doesn't seem to have his own opinion on anything at all.
Sure, he has an opinion. Just tell him what you want. That's his opinion.
and when you catch him off script, like they did with the fire in that interview, and he says that Cape Town is the only operational city in South Africa, there you go. That's the true Ramaphosa. He's not reading a script there.
It's just like Joe Biden. Hey, and so, Mr. President, I just want to say, hey, let's go, Brandon. I agree. Let's go, Brandon.
I agree. I must meet this Brandon guy.
I'll make him an advisor here at the White House. I mean, these people, how do people like this get in governance? Because the system is inept or corrupt. It's the only answer. Gosh.
It is exactly it. It is exactly it. And I think we touched on this last time we spoke as well. It's the cult of personality.
Yes.
As you said.
It is.
And that's exactly what is playing out throughout politics. The mere fact that they use Ramaphosa in local elections on the posters and billboards instead of local councillors
speaks volumes.
Says all you need to say. Yeah.
But to be fair, Rob, that was pretty much what I saw from most of the parties. They not all, but most, they put their party leader for a municipal election. I'm like, wait a second, I'm not voting for that guy. He's not even running for office. Why is he on the poster? I mean, why don't you tell me what your platform is? How are you going to fix the sewage pouring out in the townships here in Gqeberna, in Nelson Mandela Bay? That's what I want to know. But then, hey, I'm a crazy person. I expect actual governance.
You must be a crazy person then, because you're definitely not part of the masses. You're part of that fringe group that actually believes in governance and capable politicians. Does such a thing exist? I don't even think a capable politician exists.
Ooh, I don't know.
Why can't we separate politics and governance? There's another question.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because actually our bureaucracy has become highly politicized at the federal level in this country. That wasn't the case for most of my 36 and a half years in government. I didn't see that, but it's clearly the case now. I mean, I don't know if I told you the story. I had a professional relationship with a very talented analyst who works for the Congressional Research Service. Now, that's essentially the intelligence office. They're not an intelligence office. They're analysts who, whatever topic, whether it's Social Security funding or it's, I don't know, Corona, or it's, spending money to train foreign militaries, whatever Congress has purview over the budget or foreign policy, something like that, wherever they have a role, they have a research team that investigates this, and they're really good. They are good, Rob. These people are really good, and they're really small. And I had a professional relationship with one of the women who worked there, who's a very good analyst. And the reason I had the relationship is because I was in Africa, and she did reports on security sector reform in Liberia. I was the guy running the program. She did reports on violence in the Great Lakes region. I was the guy that knew about it, and she did lots of stuff for members of Congress. Like you might have a senator that wants to know about this, so they say they refer it, and someone does research, they bring it back. So I knew her very well, and we had a great relationship. I could reach out to her and say, listen, I saw there was a report coming out on this. Can you send me a copy of it? Because they're not generally available to the public. They're not classified, but it's not like, oh, here you go. This is what Congress came up with. So I could reach out to her, and if I had a question or about something, and I was trying to do a report and also trying to get a guest speaker, and I wanted her to come up. And then what happened is that when Trump was inaugurated that day, if you remember, all these women showed up on the mall behaving in atrocious fashion, dressed as dripping vaginas and saying vile things with children there. And anyway, I was sitting in a hotel in Scranton, Pennsylvania, because I'd gone up there for a hockey weekend to watch my favorite team play on Friday night, stayed overnight in a hotel and watched them Saturday night. And this was Saturday. And I'm watching all this stuff on the mainstream, on the cable news. And so there's Fox, MSNBC, CNN, bouncing back and forth. And the way they're presenting this is very different than what people on the ground who are sending pictures on Facebook and Twitter. So I'm on Facebook, which I rarely do. And I go on there and I'm chatting with her. And she says, I don't know what people are complaining about. I'm at the rally. Here's pictures. My daughter and I were walking around. None of this is happening. And so I wrote to her and I said, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Because that's not what the media is showing. The media is showing these vile images, and they're talking about Madonna blowing up in this, that, the White House and all this stuff. I said, that's not the image we're being presented in the media. So thank you for giving a first person account. And then we get in a conversation with other people in the conversation, posting back and forth. And And I said, look, I mean, you know, I wish people be honest about this. This is not about women's rights. What do you mean it's not about women's rights? Well, if it was about women's rights and you want to change it, then people would have been protesting last summer when larger numbers of people could come when it was warm and Congress was in session and you could influence Congress to change legislation. Or better yet, if you wanted Donald Trump not to win because you thought he was against women's rights, you would have been here in October before the election, changing people's minds. Not the days inaugurated. This is just angry people who have a visceral hatred of Donald Trump. It has nothing to do with women's rights. She took offense. I've never heard from her again.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I do appreciate the fact that she reported the truth. I mean, that's a step in the right direction. That's a big problem with the media as well, is that they just don't report the truth. It's all opinion now. And you know, I don't think anybody actually does know the truth anymore, especially when it comes to political players. Everything seems to be a marketing or a twisting of the truth or a propaganda approach with some hidden agenda that some politician or somebody wants to bring forward. How do we get back to true and accurate media reporting? That's
a real question, and I think that in order to get there, we have to have a line in the sand, a yard marker, a wall has got to be put out, and that wall has to start with social media. And I'm not talking about censoring social media. I'm talking about holding them accountable. First off, a lot of people don't know this, and I mentioned this in some of my videos. You know, the reason social media is the way it is today is because of a law that was put in place in the early stages of the internet, which was intended to protect these companies so that they could grow. Now, let me explain. Yeah. The Washington Post, which let me read some of the headlines from the Washington Post today, okay? Because they're desperate for subscribers. I paid $10 for 1 year of all access yesterday. So yeah, that's how desperate they are for viewers. Anyway, so $10 for something that costs $12 a month normally. Anyway, so this is the headlines. Biden says Trump spread web of lies. Now let's look for any balance here. There's no balance. On the left-hand side, January 6th anniversary, Biden blasts former president for not accepting election loss. Then over here, fact checker, the attack on the Capitol, a guide to what we know. How the GOP became the party of Trump's election lie after January 6th. Georgia Republicans cancel vigil for J6 patriots, in quotes. Trump must have his day in court for his crimes on January 6th. The false prophets who inspired the violence of January 6th. Biden explains why we cannot move on from January 6th. The insurrectionist roll call. To stabilize democracy, Congress must reform election. This is all one-sided op-ed disguised as news. There is not one. The only news story here is Biden speaking. The rest of this is op-ed is on the front page of the Washington Post, which says democracy dies in darkness. What I argue is that's the wrong tagline. Democracy dies in bullshit from the Washington Post, or as I prefer to call it, the Washington Compost. That's the bottom line here.
Washington Compost. Washington
Compost. Well, you got the New York Slimes, and the Washington Compost. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so Anna Marie Nell used.
Go hand in hand.
Yeah, they go hand in hand. Anna Marie Nell used her free super chat for her 7-month milestone, saying class 1 funeral with religious characteristics. Oh, she's asking a question what that means. That's a designation by this government in South Africa about what you get and who qualifies for what. Here in America, we overturn all that stuff all the time and just give massive, flag lowerings for people who are unaffected officials. I mean, a black person's murdered by a cop in Minneapolis and suddenly our flags are flying half-mast. That's reserved for state officials, and we've just contorted and distorted that for political purposes, which is disgraceful. It's disgraceful because then we see things like the former president of South Africa and former deputy president of South Africa, people talking about doesn't deserve a state funeral. That's nonsense. Whether you liked him or not, he was the official. Whether you thought it was legitimate or not, it doesn't matter. You hold it. If you don't like it, then don't attend. It's as simple as that. That's how it should work.
Totally agree. And it's that actually isn't even open for debate, or it shouldn't even be open for debate.
Yep.
It's a requirement. It's a regulation, and it's the accepted norm that if he was a state, then he deserves a state funeral. You can't now say no and protest against something that is just the norm. It really makes no sense. And that again is everything trying to be politicized by people who have a hidden agenda. And that agenda is just to divide everyone, divide the nation. And I think back to the 6th of January thing there. I watched Kamala Harris's dare I say speech. Her speech.
Utterances.
Yeah, her utterances. It was terrible. It really was. It was so fake, as she normally is fake. And it was so clearly an excuse for her to come out and say something and drive that same old narrative again. That really, I can't believe how they classifying what happened on 9/11 along with the January 6th. That makes no sense.
Well, never mind Pearl Harbor or the British burning the White House in the War of 1812. Come on.
No, and just the mere fact that they're doing that, it again raises alarm bells in my head and says, who was really behind this? Really, there's so much evidence to the contrary. Was it right-wing nationalists? Well, I don't think so.
No,
what about the photographic evidence of the other guys?
Yeah, this is what happened. This is the bottom line. What happened? There were instigators there who wanted trouble. They wanted trouble. Yeah. I don't know there was a grand conspiracy by the Democrats to facilitate this. I just think that they didn't think there was going to be a problem. It was not a big deal, and they ignored the warning signs because they didn't take them seriously. It's just people blowing hot steam. But then they saw an opportunity to take advantage of something, and they took advantage of something. As politicians do. Exactly. And now there were people there who were overzealous, who got caught up in the moment and did things they never should have contemplated or considered, and went into that building, either walking in when the cops opened the door or breaking in and going in thinking they were right in the heat of the moment. Ashley Babbitt trying to charge through a barrier and getting shot. She's the architect of her own demise. People think that's callous of me. It's not callous. She had no business being in the building. She had no business trying to break through a barrier that was put up with chairs and tables on the other side. It's clear that you're not welcome here. Who do you think you are? Now, I feel bad for her husband because he's a widower now. But I from the day it happened, I had no empathy for her whatsoever. Some people take issue with me, but that's fine. I believe in the rule of law, and I believe in Lady Justice, that everyone's treated the same. And she had no business in the building. I've been in that building. You have to have a badge and credentials, and you go through security to get in. You don't just break through a window and run up the stairwell chasing Capitol Police. That's ridiculous. But that's not an insurrection. Now so the guy that's been arrested there, that's gone to prison now with the buffalo horn hat, his name is Jacob Chansley. He's a shaman apparently. He is a political scapegoat. Let me explain why. He is now a convicted felon. He's never going to get a decent job. He's only in his late 20s, early 30s. He's a convicted felon, and he's been sentenced to 41 months in a federal penitentiary. This is the charge he was convicted of, Rob. Disrupting an official proceeding.
Wow.
He will spend more time in jail than a pedophile, a rapist, or a murderer.
That's amazing.
So this is a political sham. This is Budapest in 1956. This is Prague in 1968. These are communist show trials convicting. Now, that doesn't mean... Now, that guy, by the way, didn't break into the building. There's video of him walking when the cops opened the door. He also didn't steal anything. He didn't destroy any statues. He didn't rip anything down. He didn't assault anybody. He never endangered anybody. He never threatened anybody. He acted the fool and climbed up and sat on the speaker's chair, which is why they went after him. This is political, bogus nonsense. But you were asking, how do we get back to it? And that's okay. So let me get back to that point. How do we fix this? Well, we fix social media, and that's why I got off on a tangent. So 1996, the Telecommunications Act was put in place, and it affected telephones, cable, all communications in this country. It modified how things were done, how tariffs were done, how money is put into a pool for rural telephone systems and for cell phones and all that stuff. Anyway, but it also put provisions in for the internet, and that's what prompted it, because we finally had graphical browsers for the first time in 1994 with Mark Anderson at the University of Illinois at Carbondale and Mosaic. And from 94 onwards, the general public could start to get on the internet, whereas a lot of us have been doing it for years before that in the government and research facilities. Anyway, so they put this in place, and what they did is that social media companies would not exist. There would be no Twitter, there would be no YouTube, there would be no Gitter, no Parler, none of that stuff, no MySpace, if you remember that. None of that would exist unless they had some kind of protection, because here's what happens. If you post something in a newspaper like the Washington Post, that's how I got off track, and it's wrong, it's libel, you could be sued. You have a responsibility to report the truth, and you could be sued by someone for misreporting the truth. Because you're an editor, you have the ability to stop that from happening. So if you have a journalist that writes something, it just says, Donald Trump is urinating on prostitutes in Moscow, and you put that in your paper, and an editor approves that, you're liable if it's untrue. in order to protect social media, they say, wait a second, these companies aren't writing these things. They're not publishing these things, these chat boards and these message boards, even before we had Twitter and stuff like that. They are simply allowing people to use their platform. It's kind of like somebody leasing their farmland out. You want to grow wheat, you can grow it on my farmland, you have to pay me a fee. That's kind of like that. So they put in position in this legislation protections for social media that said that you're not an editor, therefore you can't be held responsible legally for what people put in your channel within reason. I mean, if someone advocates violence or commits crimes, you have to stop that from happening. That's not an editor. That's just following the law. But if you change content, if you remove content, if you modify content, you're an editor. But you're not an editor because you're not doing that. So that allowed them to flourish. No lawsuits. You can't sue Twitter because somebody called you a deuce. You can't sue Twitter because somebody doxed you and exposed your home and the names of your family. You can't sue them. But somewhere along the way, these tech titans run by disgusting, vile leftists. Is your dog trying to get out again? Oh, your mic's on mute.
Sorry, that's my son.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Anyway, so you were getting distracted. I thought it was getting boring. But anyway, so the law protects them from lawsuits. Could you imagine with the billions of people using social media, the number of lawsuits they face for people whose reputation are damaged because of social media? It would be endless. The courts would be clogged. So they were protected as long as they weren't editors. But along the way, these vile leftists decided they were going to determine where the narrative went and what the truth was. I mean, think about this. Twitter bans Marjorie Taylor Greene for spewing misinformation on corona. What does Twitter know about corona? Where is their team of epidemiologists and scientists and medical practitioners who determine what she said is, well, no, she disagreed with. See, I got censored by YouTube for reporting what Dr. Fauci said. I did a video with him on there saying something, and they accused me of medical misinformation. How can you do that? That is editing. That is not a platform. And that's why social media. So we have to fix that. Donald Trump failed us all by not addressing that in 2017 when he had a majority in the House and Senate. Not that it would have got approved because Mitch McConnell is a fraudulent Republican. He might have stopped it from happening, but he never even addressed it. He waited until the summer of 2020. He goes, oh, the fake news, the media. It's too late. You don't have control of the legislature. You can't get legislation through. So if we fix social media with legislation in the United States, which of course is what's driving social media around the world, then it begins to change for the better. Because if these companies can't delete voices that are out there, then people be heard. For instance, my platform had 23,000 people. I had every day, Rob, in December and January last year, 2,500 hours of content viewed every day. That's a slow day. I had 10 to 15,000 views every single day. And my channel was actually making money. It was profitable because I used the money for travel, for buying stuff, and it covered those expenses. My channel was eliminated on a fraudulent basis. It's taking me almost a year to get back to 5,300 subscribers. I'm not even there yet. My voice has been tamped down. I am lucky to get 300 hours of content viewed per day and 1,500 views per day now. They've succeeded. And that's my voice. I'm not one of these nutters that they don't like that talks about Dominion and 5G and it's the vaxes, microchips and all that. No, I'm not one of those people. I'm a rational, cogent analyst who tells the truth. And I attack both sides when they mislead and lie. And when you silence a voice like mine, multiplied by hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in Myanmar, in South Africa, in Europe, in the United Kingdom, in the US, you control the narrative. And they control the narrative, and that has to stop. We have to reform that and hold them liable or tell them they can't censor anymore and come up with a mechanism to stop it. If we fix that, we can get back to good governance. It's the first step. We won't be able to hold the media accountable because they're private companies unless people who have money like Joe Rogan and Crowder and Donald Trump just start suing them into oblivion. I mean, we've already seen a consequence for libel and slander by CNN and other networks when they slandered Nicholas Sandmann, the young kid from Kentucky. That kid has got tens of millions of dollars in the bank, and we'll never know how much money he's got because they all were guilty. And now Kyle Rittenhouse, he might be the next billionaire because they lied about him and people. So if you hold them legally responsible, that's the start. So we got to fix social media. That's the first step. But until we fix social media, there's no voices out there. The mainstream media are not going to put people like me on there to talk about stuff like this. They won't do it.
I totally agree. In fact, the moment they started censoring people and silencing those voices and changing that narrative, they then became editors and publishers.
Right, and which violates the act.
totally violates that act. So it's beyond me why they weren't taken to task immediately on that one. But once you start censoring people, you enter a very slippery slope, and the only way is downhill. And they pushed it for too long, and they can't stop it. It's that snowball that's just going to destroy them. There's no doubt that Twitter's days are numbered, Facebook's days are numbered, and it's great in one way because it's going to open up platforms for other entrepreneurs to create a free speech platform, but it's going to take a serious amount of money to get that going, and confidence from the people that are already using Twitter and Facebook to move across, because we've just become too accustomed to it. But it is dangerous because what baffles me is why do they drive this narrative? Is it the companies themselves, or is there something behind the scenes going on, a political motive as we suspect? What is actually going on here?
Well, I think there's a couple things going on. I think that these people that are driving these narratives actually believe in the bullshit that they're pushing. They actually believe that. I mean, they actually believe that J.K. Rowling saying that women's rights should be protected is anti-trans. It's not in any way anti-trans. It's pro-women. And there were feminists that would defend this to the death. Where did they go? Why is J.K. Rowling? They've just another prep school in the UK just renamed one of the residential houses because it was named Rowling. Now it's gone. Why? What did she do? She didn't come out and assault trans people. She didn't denigrate them. She didn't say they were evil. She didn't say ostracize them. She simply said, stop the nonsense. It's like these trans athletes in sports. If you want trans athletes, then they have to have their own category. If you grew up sexually and developed physiologically as a male with male hormones and then transition to female, you have a structural edifice that is different than a biological female. And you have distinct advantages when it comes to muscle mass. And even if you're on, estrogen series of hormones now, you still have that structure there. And we see it play out. When people hail a male high school student who transitioned to female, by the way, not taking hormones for female transition, not having changed their organs, still physiologically a male, but identifying as a female, wiping out record after record in the swimming pool for female athletes, and people are hailing that. What? Now, this was an also-ran athlete who never won a single race as a male. And suddenly I'm a female and setting records, and by the way, winning scholarships to university and depriving women of this. And J.K. Rowling calls this nonsense out. I will give Martina Navratilova credit. She did a documentary a few years ago in which this issue came up. She was torn. She's a lesbian, and she was torn because she's in favor of gay rights. I don't think anything such things as gay rights exist. I think it's bullshit. We all have the same rights. There's no special rights for gay people and no special disadvantage against them. Simply enforce the law and treat everybody fairly. That's why I hate this nonsense about that. Anyway, but she's an advocate for gay rights and gay marriage and all this stuff. And she looked at this in a very serious context, and she was torn. She says, I want to respect the rights these people identify as a different sex, but this is wrong. This is wrong. These are physiologically males, and they're creaming females to the disadvantage. In America, we spent decades trying to achieve equality in government resources. I don't think we should achieve equality in outcomes. That's wrong. That's artificial. That's what the leftists want. And it just brings us all down to a lower level. But equality of opportunity is fair. So much money was put into high school football, for boys, for basketball, even for golf and baseball in our public schools. Taxpayers' dollars. And it wasn't going to women's sports. So girls, for the most part, weren't playing sports in high school 50, 100 years ago. That changed with Title IX. Federal legislation said you must spend money equally. A lot of people moaned about it. Well, now we got lacrosse teams that can't win a game and these girls. But as time progressed, we wound up with world-class soccer players for the women, world-class basketball players. And not only do we have a benefit from the fact that girls participated more actively in sports, but they developed some of the same skills that men were getting advantage for decades. Esprit, teamwork, cohesion, working together to achieve a goal. These were things that were in limited opportunities for girls before, and society is better for it. And now it's all being destroyed because biological males are winning and taking things away from genuine females. And it's just wrong. And so they're canceling J.K. Rowling. It's insane. It's insane.
It's totally insane. And it's irrational thinking and very shallow thinking, in my opinion. People acting purely on emotion. And not even genuine emotion. It's fake
It's
emotion.
fake.
And
It's fake. Yeah.
it's virtue signaling to the extreme. And that it goes further because there's now legislation being put out in South Africa as well. There was a recent amendment to the hate crimes and hate speech bill.
Yeah.
Or the act. And for the life of me, and I really struggle with this. Maybe you can assist me to understand. Why are we classifying this new category or creating this new category of hate crime? What is a hate crime? Because a hate crime involves either murder, assault, or something else, which already exists in law. Those are the crimes themselves. Why are we now creating subcategories of that wasn't just murder, or that wasn't just assault, that was a hate crime, but we'll charge you with assault and add the hate crime bit onto it as well? I don't get it. I really don't get it.
You don't get it because you're a reasonable, cogent thinking individual. It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. First off, if you murder someone, it's a hateful act. If you rape someone, it's a hateful act of violence. If you steal from someone, it's a hateful act. There's no such thing as a hate crime. It's bullshit invented by politicians to punish people and try to cow society. That's as simple as that. That's what it is. And I've always been opposed to this nonsense. And the punishments for hate crimes are typically far more egregious than they are for the same crime. You murder someone, and listen, we already have that degree. We have manslaughter. We have first-degree murder, second-degree murder, depending on the circumstances, the premeditation, the happenstance of it. If you kill somebody by mistake, it's manslaughter. You still killed somebody. There should be a cost even if you mistakenly kill them, But that's not murder. So this hate crime nonsense, it's just like in the States we have all this, well, civil rights. The federal government's getting involved because there's civil rights. No. Individuals can't deny civil rights. The civil rights are protected from government intrusion. So if I don't want a yellow person or a blue person to come in my house, that's my privilege and my prerogative. That's not a civil rights violation. You have no authority in my abode. I'm not the government. Now, if a blue person or a yellow person wants to go in a federal building and they're denied, that's a civil rights violation because they have constitutionally guaranteed rights. But I can associate with whoever the hell I want. The government doesn't have any authority over that. And your constitution is similar in that respect.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the hate crimes bill, the proposed hate crimes bill, went even further. It said if you feel, and it had specific categories for different classes, especially gender, because it's all around the gender-based violence issue, which is no doubt a problem in South Africa.
But that's not going to solve gender-based violence. Two-parent families, respect for life, morals, values, education, that will fix gender-based violence.
Totally agree. You can't place punitive measures on people and expect them not to do it because your law only takes place after the crime has been committed anyway. So it's not a deterrent in any way whatsoever. But what they've actually said is, if you feel that you have been that you're offended by what someone says or what someone does or the way they behave, then you're a victim of a hate crime and you have a legitimate claim. You don't even have to provide any
evidence.
How do you provide evidence?
Yeah.
How
do you prove the harm? Your feelings were hurt. Did your income get lowered? Was your home attacked? Did you lose a job? No, your feelings were hurt. That's not actionable.
And how does the judge make the call on that as well?
Yeah.
It's all going to depend on how the judge feels that day and who the judge is as well. So it's really stepping into very, very dangerous territory where these kind of laws can be used to silence anybody that opposes your way of thinking. It's straight into the
totalitarian fascism. What is it's meant to cow and silence people. It is. It absolutely is. I mean, so many laws that are being reviewed in South Africa, so many things. It's like expropriation without compensation. It's not about taking farmland. It's about silencing political opponents. And I've said this from the outset, and almost no other analyst has pointed this out. I said, yes, it is about taking some land, but this is the thing. Read the expropriation without compensation. First off, expropriation is already legal. The government can take land if it's in the public interest now, just like in America, it's called eminent domain. Now, they misuse that authority, but in South Africa, they don't want to pay for it. Why? Because they don't want farmland. They want to take your property. And why do they want to take your property? Either to steal or to silence you as a critic of the government. So here's a what if. Here's a scenario. I move to South Africa. I put my money in the bank. I buy a nice, Bucky and an SUV, and I got a nice house. And well, I wouldn't say Hout Bay. I heard it's gone down. So let's go with Hermanus. Okay, that's still nice. So I got a nice house in Hermanus, and I'm an outspoken journalist criticizing the African National Congress, or let's pretend it's a different party. We'll call it the ABC party, okay? Just like in Lesotho, the ABC party. So it's the ABC party running South Africa now, and it's 10 years in the future. They've taken over, and I criticize them every day. They've had enough of it. Listen, Mr. Wyatt, you know that if you don't shut up, we'll confiscate your bank accounts, evict you from your home. Well, what are you talking about? It's mine. No, we can expropriate anything we want because it's property. And suddenly I go silent. That's what it's all about ultimately. And the government of the day, regardless of what political party is, will use that as a mechanism to silence opponents. And almost nobody sees that. I don't understand how they don't see that. I don't live in South Africa, and I see that. This is very dangerous. The land issue has been lied about endlessly, repeatedly, and it's used to bifurcate people on race. And the lunacy of the African National Congress in the 21st century talking about adding 1 million people to farms when most of the planet is going in mechanization and reducing people on the farms is just comical. It's not about, it really irritates me because it's a political tool to silence opposition. This is what politicians do.
It absolutely is. And I'm glad you said that it's any government will use it as
not just the ANC.
Any government will.
Right. Right. Any government will use the tools at their disposal. In the States, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, whether it's Tories or Labor, whether it's the SPD or the CDU, they will use the tools of repression when it suits their needs. And that is because of permanent political class. Politicians that spend their entire lives in government. They become ensconced in this bubble, and they think that they have a right to decide what the rest of the world wants and gets. Let me address something real quick before we get too far. There was a message earlier from Sylvester Celine, I think it was, saying that about, let me see if I can find that again, where he was saying about Ashley Babbitt. Maybe I went back too far about Ashley Babbitt. I think, here it is. It doesn't matter if what she did was illegal. That was inappropriate use of force. I agree she was wrong, but the officer was way out of line. Sylvester, I don't disagree with you, but my issue has less to do with his actions and far more to do with the government's cover-up. In the case of the officer who shot Ashley Babbitt, the government intentionally concealed his identity and protected him. Why? And the reason I ask the question is I don't think, generally speaking, because of the hyperbolic response to what happened on January 6th, that it may have been appropriate to protect his identity because he might have been in danger. So I didn't have a problem with that. What I did have a problem with is like 2 days later when a black person in a vehicle tried to run over a Capitol Police officer at a barrier trying to get access to the grounds 2 days later. He was shot and killed by a white police officer. Instantaneously, the Capitol Police released the officer's name. Why? Because he shot a black suspect. Now, flip it around, the cop that shot Ashley Babbitt was black, which leads me to believe the only reason they covered his identity up is because they were trying to cover up the fact of black on white violence. Now, I don't call it black on white violence. He's a law enforcement official defending a building, and he took, he made a big mistake. He was wrong. He was wrong. But obviously, the guy, he didn't do it based on racial motivation. He did it based on his emotional reaction. This is the same police officer who was cited for leaving his firearm loaded in the latrine, in the bathroom, unguarded. He went in, washed his hands after using the toilet, and left his firearm in there. Somebody walked in and like, hey, whose gun is this? So not exactly somebody that should have been on duty that day. So yeah, but my problem is this. If you're going to do it, you have to be consistent. There's no consistency here, which leads people to believe it's all motivated by politics, which it is.
It absolutely is. I mean, that whole story that you just raised is exactly a reflection of the danger of the hate crimes bill, because suddenly you can add a racially motivated excuse onto anything, onto absolutely anything, and then it becomes a political minefield, which is exactly what we're seeing in South Africa. Suddenly, everything is racially motivated. Yeah. And even in the US, it's the same there.
Yeah.
The things that are definitely not racially motivated somehow take that angle, both in the defense and in the attack. People who say, "Oh, you're attacking me because I'm a different race," or "You only attacked me because a different race." It really, maybe that was the same thing, but it's okay,
Rob. You're trying to explain their circular logic, and you're confused because you wound up in the same spot, just like them.
I did. I didn't need to explain anything. It was just it had to be said.
It's obvious.
But, yeah. So I think really, we need to challenge issues like the hate crimes bill. And as you said, I mean, we ran the whole participation campaign on that, and I got a lot of emails from groups, gender-based violence groups, saying it's a great idea. We need to introduce these bills, and because it's going to curb gender-based violence and so on. No, it's not. It won't change a damn thing. It won't change.
No, it will. It will. It'll lead to malicious prosecution and imprisonment of people falsely.
Precisely.
I mean, it's like this nonsense that the government came up with last year. Anyone accused of gender-based violence or rape will be imprisoned without bail. What the hell is that? That violates the Constitution. You're entitled to bail. I mean, they give the suspects who murder farmers, they give them bail for 300 rand. That's a joke. So you're going to someone that's falsely accused of rape or sexual assault is going to be jailed just because someone said it. That's, now of course you'll get these lunatics like, oh, you're just a misogynist. You hate women. What are you talking about? I like justice. That's not justice. It's ridiculous. Like the cop in Minnesota, or was he in Minnesota, Kim Potter, who shot the suspect who was a felon, open warrant, driving with illegal plates. They pulled him over and he pulled away, and the cop was on the other side of the window, was being drug away, presumably to his death. She ordered him to stop. He refused to stop. She said taser to warn the other cop, but grabbed her sidearm. All these Monday morning quarterbacks running going, oh, she deserves, that was murder. She killed him because he was black. No, she meant to disable a felon who was fleeing and putting lives in danger, and she reached for the wrong side. Well, she's a cop. Ask you that. Yeah, let me put you in a stressful situation, and let's see how well you do reaching for something that you need to reach for in that moment. She made a mistake. She is guilty of causing his death, but he is the architect of his demise, just like Ashley Babbitt. If he had simply adhered to police instructions, he would not have caused that situation. She was remanded before Christmas without bail. Now, bail in America is done by the states, but it's generally is along these lines. You cannot get bail, or you have to have high bail if you're a flight risk, you're going to leave the country, or you're going to flee the jurisdiction, or if you're a danger to society. This is a 26-year police veteran who has protected the community for 26 years. She's not a threat to society. She's not a flight risk. Everybody knows who she is. She's not going to get anywhere. Just confiscate her passport. She can't. And maliciously, she was remanded without bail by a judge over Christmas for a mistake. She's a convicted felon now. By the way, she's convicted of manslaughter twice of the same individual. How does that I don't understand that. She was convicted of 2 degrees of manslaughter. You killed him twice? What the hell is that? I don't get that. That's their legal system in Minneapolis. But the point is that she made a mistake, and it's been politicized, and now she's a felon in prison, and she could face life without parole for a mistake.
That's terrible.
Oh, it's a miscarriage of justice. But when you point that stuff out, people want to go after you. It's just it's absolutely ludicrous. It's ludicrous. The whole discussion gets wrapped around this stuff. Is like, Kyle Rittenhouse, he's a white supremacist. Really? Where did he write literature? Did he go to a Klan meeting? Is he a member of a club? How do you know that? Well, he's a white supremacist because he's white. He shot black people. Actually, he didn't shoot any black people. He shot a pedophile who tried to murder him, and he shot another guy and blew his arm off nearly because the guy pointed a weapon at him and started to fire at him. And he was struck in the back of the head with deadly force with a skateboard. And if you think a skateboard isn't deadly force, try getting hit in the back with the trucks on a skateboard made out of forged steel. Actually, Kyle Rittenhouse's conduct that night was exemplary from my perspective. The kid showed great restraint, and he could have shot people indiscriminately. He didn't. In fact, he could have shot another assailant who approached him, and he raised the rifle and warned him, and the guy put his hands up and backed away, and he never fired a shot at him. This after having been attacked, having just shot someone, terrified, a 16-year-old kid. It's amazing that, we don't see law enforcement officials have that kind of restraint. Certainly not politicians.
Definitely. And if you look at the full footage, he was actually running towards the police, trying to get away from.
Right. They assaulted him from behind.
100%, they did. And for a 17-year-old to remain calm in the way he did, I'll take my hat off to that. It really was something else. But it was an opportunity for certain individuals to politicize something, and in a desperate attempt to brand a certain group of people as right-wing extremists and the typical definition of whatever that is. And I think we even broached this on the previous episode as well, that whole definition between left and right. If you're on the right, then you are a gun-toting maniac who does this and falls in all these checkpoints and so on. So as soon as they see an individual defending himself, a young individual defending himself with a firearm, they immediately categorize him. He must be this. He must be a white supremacist. He must be a racist. He must be this. He must be a Trump supporter. He must be the... It's amazing how humans have been conditioned to categorize the entire world, the entire 7.8 billion individuals on this planet into two personalities.
Yeah.
One left, one right.
Yep.
And it's the end.
No,
of
it's also, Rob, it's also fascinating how people falsely attribute things to certain things. So, for instance, if you go to Wikipedia and you look up fascism, a right-wing political philosophy. No, it's not. Fascism is a colossal political spectrum. The National Socialists were fascist, but they were leftist.
Yes, exactly. And we seem to forget that.
Yeah.
And that's, we I saw a brilliant tweet. The only thing we've learned from history is that we haven't learned anything from history. And that's exactly how it is. We seem to forget, or history is manipulated into such an extent that it just becomes a political football. But we chatted about that last time.
Yeah, but what's really sad about but what's really sad about that, especially, is that there was a time when you and I were younger that academics could mislead us if they had an objective, but that's who was producing the narrative, academics and legitimate politicians. But now with social media, idiots and even idiot politicians can say anything and it suddenly becomes the truth. I mean, a member of the African National Congress in Parliament standing up and claiming that when Jan van Riebeck came here 2,000 years ago and stole our land. And I'm thinking, whose land? The only people in South Africa 2,000 years ago were Khoi and San bands of people. There were no Bantu-speaking peoples in South Africa 2,000 years ago. There were no Europeans in South Africa 2,000 years ago. So what was Jan van Riebeck, a mixed race, by the way, not a white guy, a mixed race guy, half Indonesian, half Dutch. What was he doing in the Cape, about 1,400 years before he was even born? 1,500 years before he was born. So anyway, but that gets spread and people believe it. It's true. Or Malema says some outlandish thing and people believe it to be true. Let's attack Clicks, Clicks is racist. Okay, let's look at the facts. The ad that was insensitive and rude was a European ad. And I have an issue with the ad because I just think it's stupid to begin with. But it was posted by a black employee for a majority black-owned company, Clicks. And it was removed within a couple hours after I'd been posted because it was done by mistake. It wasn't done intentionally. So what's Julius Malema? Oh, look at this white monopoly capital. It's racist. And people fall for it. And they send their thugs out and they petrol bomb a Clicks location. No charges filed. Nobody goes to jail. 44 Clicks locations ransacked and destroyed. Elderly patients going to the pharmacy, the chemist, to get their life-saving drugs. Denied access by thugs from the EFF, breaking down and terrorizing these stores, and no charges of domestic terrorism ever charged or brought against Julius Malema for inciting this domestic terrorism and violence. And the press just gives it a free pass. They report on it, but no talk about it. And this is so sad. And this plays out every day across the world.
It does. And it's incredible that nobody was brought to task on that. I mean, you don't have to go far as Domestic Terrorism Act. You can even go to simple charge of malicious damage to property, which in itself is a criminal offence. I should know that. I've been charged with it myself.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, 25 years ago, 26 years ago. Yeah,
ladies and gentlemen, the opinions and words of convicted felons on this channel do not reflect. No.
Absolutely. No, for full transparency, it was a stupid mistake on my behalf. I threw my ex-girlfriend's, she just broken up with me and I threw her stuff out and then she came to collect it and charged me with malicious damage to her
malicious
property.
Damage for throwing your property out of your house? What, are you supposed to keep it there rent free? I mean, you charge her for storage fees.
But it is what it is, and
that's a weak story. I thought you were going to tell me, you threw a rock at Parliament or something.
Yes, I earned my protest stripes and took out a politician. No, it's quite sad. In fact, I should embellish it and say yes, it was something that it wasn't. No, it wasn't. But I could have had that removed or expunged. I mean, after 10 years, you can have those kind of records expunged. But I haven't, because it's a stark reminder that you should think before you act.
Yeah.
And every time I want to do something, I always like, okay, let's see both sides of that story. But a lot of people don't do that anymore. And I think that comes back to what we were discussing there about the hate crimes and censorship of social media and everything else, is you've got to take responsibility for your own actions at the end of the day and realize what the consequences of your actions. And a lot of people don't do that anymore. It's just instantaneous. We do this, we act, we defend where we shouldn't be defending, and all of that causes damage to the general narrative that goes out there. And journalists are also extremely guilty of that. They don't dig into the facts, they don't search for the facts, they just see what's presented to them and they take it as verbatim, and then write an opinion on that, and then the followers believe it. And really, we got to do some serious action here in not just South Africa, not just the US, but across the world.
Yeah.
In trying to reignite that whole critical thinking aspect. Think of both sides. Delve deep into it. What's the motivation behind this? Who stands to benefit is the question everyone should ask on anything that goes. If a politician says something, why is he saying this? Why is she saying this? Why are they saying this? Who stands to benefit from that? And from that, you can start building up a set of questions and getting to the truth eventually.
Yeah. Now, Rob, it's interesting because you mentioned, you really got to put a filter on or a regulator on your behavior and your commentary. It's a personal rule I had when I worked in government because I know the danger of writing a bad email. It can come back to haunt you. And also, I know that email lasts forever. It's as Bill Gates found, much to his consternation when he was sued for monopolistic practices with Internet Explorer. Bill Gates, as bright as he thinks he is, didn't realize that email is subject to discovery. He just thought it was electrons. So all the emails were confiscated from Microsoft servers. And in fact, it was proven that they colluded to destroy Netscape, and it cost them $1 billion at the time. So I learned that lesson vicariously by watching others. So I'll admit, I'll sit down and write something really angry, and sometimes even full of profanity or, personal attacks. And then I'll save it. I won't send it. That's a rule. If I'm angry or I'm upset about something, or if I'm writing about something, knowing the audience, it might offend a person, even though there's nothing wrong with it, I'll set it aside. I'll come back and look at it. The article that I wrote that's posted today on Morning Shot about today's events, a year ago, January 6th, I have an article that appeared on Morning Shot today. I wrote that 4 days prior, 80% of it. And it was not full of profanity, but there's also wordsmithing, you're saying the same word, about business doing business. Okay, that's redundant. How about companies conducting business? There you go. Things like that. So that wordsmithing comes into play because, that first draft isn't so great. But also, okay, you know what? This is probably a little too raw or emotional. Let me tone that down because all that's going to do is anger people and they're not going to listen to the message. So putting that filter on, that regulator on your behavior is important. And I asked myself this last night when I was putting together the video that came on today that I used to play for my live stream before this, and also I posted online footage from last year. And I said to myself, what? I counterfactual, Rob. I left at 2:25. The Congress started convening at 1 o'clock. At 2:25, I left because my batteries were dying. It was cold. What else is going on? People are just standing here yelling and waving their flags. And okay, that's it. I've covered the event. I want to get home because it's going to get dark. It's wintertime. So because it's a 2-hour drive. So I went back. And but the counterfactual is this. I asked myself this last year, and I asked myself this again last night. What if I'd stayed? Would I have gotten overly emotional with the crowd or moved forward when they went and pushed the police back and approached the door? Would I have gone in the Capitol building? And it's easy to say, no, I wouldn't have done that. I could control my emotions. But honestly, having watched what I said at the time in the videos I showed earlier and hearing myself for the first time in a year, because I haven't watched this footage, even though I put it together in other videos, because I don't edit it. That would be dishonest. Anyway, listening to what I said, I was constrained and controlled at the time. When people were throwing water bottles at police, you can hear me telling, knock it off. Leave the police alone. We don't have an argument with the police. We're here to show our anger about our, to show Congress, send a message to Congress, basically is what I said. And then when people are trying to incite violence, I'm talking to people, you hear me on camera, like, this is stupid. Knock it off. Knock it off. And then the cops came out with sniper rifles on the top, and I'm trying to admonish people who are going up I'm like, stop. You see, they brought sniper rifles out. There are snipers up there. What do you think you're going to accomplish here? And this kid's like, it's war. I'm like, how many combat tours you got? So my point is that this isn't Monday morning quarterbacking. I'm pretty confident that I would have been restrained and tried to constrain people, and I never would have approached that building using good judgment at the time. Now, 20-year-old Chris might have been a little different.
Exactly.
But I mean,
20-year-old Chris would probably be running on emotions more than
on emotions. But even then, I think I would have been wise enough because of my experience in the military, even at the age of 20, to know that I'm not allowed to go in that building, so I'm not going to do it. But I would have probably been out there cheering them on. Yeah, stop the steal. I probably would have been doing that at 20. Yeah, but
the mob mentality.
But the funny thing is that most of the people who went in the building were over the age of 35. So
wow, there you go.
Not the ones that broke in. Most of them were under the age of 35. Most of the people walked in, like rubes when they're invited in, they were over the age of 35. So anyway.
Well, emotionally, they weren't 35. They were probably much younger.
Yeah, probably. Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
It's amazing how mob mentality takes over.
It is.
And we can see that in South Africa.
Crowd dynamics are dangerous.
Oh, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I think a lot of political players use that to their advantage. And they can manipulate a huge crowd of people by instigating or having a few instigators or agent provocateurs in a crowd, rile the crowd up, get them emotionally ramped up, and then once they're in that emotional state, you can do anything. You can program people to go anywhere.
It's from a psychological standpoint, it's absolutely astounding. And of course, as a counterintelligence agent, crowd dynamics is one of the things I pay close attention to. This is why crowds can be so dangerous. Peaceful crowds can turn angry in a heartbeat. It doesn't take much. I mean, all you need in some places is a demonstration, people walking peacefully, and then a police officer, start beating somebody up at the front of the crowd, and it goes out of control. It's astounding, and people will do things in a crowd. We see this, and the perfect example is this English soccer hooligans. That's the perfect example. People die as a consequence of their actions. When I went to the UK for the Rugby World Cup in 2015, I went to Brighton for my first game, which was South Africa versus Japan. Yeah, that game. I had a ticket for that game. So I go to Brighton and I go down there and I try to go into the stadium because I'm running late because the traffic was bad and the game's about to start. And they wouldn't let me in. I'm like, I can't get in. I have a ticket. You can't enter. I'm like, I have a ticket. This isn't a fake ticket. You can't enter. Why? It's the wrong entrance. I'm like, what does it matter? You have to go to your entrance. And I'm like, I don't understand because I've never been in an English stadium before. So I go around the other side of the stadium because that's how far it was away. I get in and the game is literally is starting. They're kicking the ball. And I find out why. Because of soccer hooligans in England, in their soccer stadiums, which is where this is played in Brighton, not at rugby pitch, you can only enter at the entrance because they cordon off every section of the stadium. It's not like America or Germany. You can't walk or South Africa walk around the stadium during the game and go to different. No, that's it. That's the only place you can go because of their violence. No, but the behavior of people in a crowd is really something, and people just lose their mind. It's like being in a nightclub, man. Couple drinks, and it's all on now, man.
And it's absolutely correct, and it doesn't have to be in a violent or tense situation.
No,
because we tend to follow our teams and our peers, especially when it comes to elections and voting as well. We don't look at the facts. We just look at the messages going out, and we follow the crowd and vote because they're voting for it as well.
Yeah,
and that's again is a dangerous space because as we've seen, it doesn't matter if the ANC doesn't deliver on service delivery or produce any results, people are still going to vote for them.
Yeah,
and they have no reason why. Well, they have no idea why they're voting for them. They're voting for them because we voted for them last time. We'll give them one more chance. Everybody else is voting for them, so we don't want to be left behind. Or is it perhaps because of the fear factor? I don't know.
Well, that definitely plays a role because there's propaganda that if opposite, first off, the DA is a party of the whites. Well, that's the biggest fiction propagated out there to begin with. I mean, the majority of voters who vote for the DA are actually colored South Africans. That's factual. Now, I don't know if that's going to continue in the future, but that's been historically the norm because their stronghold is in Western Cape. And where they've made inroads in Gauteng, they did so on the strength of appealing to Indians and to coloreds and to even black voters. In Gauteng, 17% of the DA's vote in 2019 were black voters. That's not insignificant, for a party that's supposedly the party of the whites. Now, the DA can legitimately be accused of its leadership has traditionally predominantly been white South Africans. That's a fair criticism. But it's not a party of the whites. It's total nonsense. It's like, the Freedom Front Plus, just a bunch of right-wing, pro-apartheid fascists. I mean, that's just utter nonsense. Anybody that reads their platform and then watches what they do politically realizes that that is a attitude or a viewpoint locked in 1992. When Viljoen formed the Freedom Front before it became the Freedom Front Plus. It's not the party of today. And I'm not pimping or defending or attacking a political party. I'm just stating facts. Whether you like them or not, if you look at the positions, the Freedom Front Plus is actually more centrist than virtually any political party in South Africa. They do have right-of-center conservative things, but most of what they're talking about is just middle of the road. Civil liberties, rule of law, proper education, respect for ethnic minorities, respect for religion. That's what they're talking about. So they're middle of the road. It's really crazy. Let me address two things in the chat real quick here. Anna Marie Nell said, we know it's a great guest when Chris doesn't get us into the chat. Fair point, Anna Marie Nell, but Rob is not a guest. He's a co-host for this program. This is our program. And so he's not a guest on this one. This is every week now. We're doing this, the Wise Bros answer the question every week. And you see how Rob turned it around on me. Okay, now you answer the question. And then Anne-Marie said, whoa. She said that we're glad Chris left when he did on January 6th because there's no Wi-Fi in prison.
Wi-Fi in prison.
Oh, there might be these days,
I don't know. They've got the best healthcare. They've got the best education. Who's to say they don't have the best Wi-Fi connection?
Exactly. Well. They may have a T1 connection for all you know.
Exactly. T1 connection.
Anne-Marie Neal says it's a good thing because you're there to watch a game. I think she's talking presumably about soccer. No, I don't think it's a good thing at all. Part of the experience of going to a sports competition for me is walking around the stadium, going to the different venues, looking at the food stands, looking at the different stores that sell things. For instance, if you go to Camden Yards in Baltimore for the Orioles, they have their main team store, which is in the building outside the outfield, and it's full of everything. But if you walk around, they have different stores inside that carry different items. And it's kind of cool. The only place to get a crab cake is one stand at the back behind home plate in the stadium, centrally located. You can get other things, Coke and hot dogs and popcorn and beer at all the stands, but the crab cake's only one place. And also, Camden Yards is an iconic architectural site. So walking around, it's beautiful. And I go to these sporting events during the breaks, half times, or between innings to get exercise too. I exercise. I try to get steps in, and I try to meet people and experience life. Humans are social creatures, and I like to watch people. That's why I go to Vegas. I don't go to Vegas to gamble. I like to watch other people gamble. They're entertaining.
Absolutely. I'd have to agree on that. Definitely. I love watching people and observing what's going on and seeing the interaction and the way people react to certain stimulus and social stimulus. It's quite fascinating.
It is.
And I used to play a game where you sit at a restaurant which is facing a parking lot or where you can see a bunch of cars and match the person to the vehicle. And you think, okay, this person's wearing this type of clothing, they're behaving in a certain way, they must drive that car over there, whether it's a BMW and 99% of the time you're correct because the vehicle is simply an extension of your personality. That's the most. All vehicles are pretty much the same, but people buy them because they identify with that brand, and that perhaps that goes into politics as well. So politicians play their crowd and they play them well. Well, good politicians do. And if you look at in South Africa, you look at the EFF, they certainly know their crowd, and I don't think the DA does.
They don't. They're clueless and disconnected from their voting base. They really are.
Yeah, absolutely. So perhaps that needs to be a bit of a reform inside the DA if they want to be relevant or become relevant, or I was going to say remain relevant, but let's say become relevant again.
There you go. I think that's the right phrase.
They kind of lost that, yeah.
No, they've lost the bubble.
They have, and that could be from a leadership that is out of touch. They've been there for too long. Our society has changed so much in the past 10 years, and it's changing at an unbelievable pace still. So we need to get fresh people and fresh ideas and young blood into politics across all levels and all parties as well, because us old folk really, our time is up in politics. But
All
We
right.
must
Okay.
identify those people.
Two problems with that statement. I'm not going to let that slide. First off, you and I are not old. We're not even remotely old. We're not even middle. I'm approaching middle age. But anyway, so that's the first thing. Second thing is that, I get the sentiment, and I don't, you're just saying in general, but I hear it a lot from younger people. Well, get the old tuppies out. They have no business running governments. I have a problem with that standpoint. I think that our leadership should be comprised of people across all age cohorts. And that, people who are lucid and cogent, who have experience and who have been there and done that, play a vital role in ameliorating or moderating the conduct of their peers who are in politics. I mean, the last thing I want is a Congress full of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who are raging emotional aholics. Yeah.
You raise an excellent point, and I retract everything I just said. On that word.
No, but
those three letters, AOC.
No, but seriously, Rob, we hear this all the time about, people, but the problem I have is with people that are permanent political class. That's my issue. Mitch McConnell, 30 some years in the Senate. Strom Thurmond, half a century in the Senate. Nancy Pelosi, 8,000 years in the House of Representatives. Now, I'm not picking on Cornyn Mulder, but he's the only person left from the legislature when it was still under apartheid. He's been in the legislature since then. Not picking on him. He's a competent guy. I like him. He's professional. And he's probably one of the exceptions where I don't necessarily have a beef with him being there. But my point is that generally speaking, people who gravitate towards political power and never leave it because of all the things it does for them, not for what they can do for society. My example of a politician is always Davy Crockett. Davy Crockett didn't want to run for Congress, but his constituents, he was a popular, famous outdoorsman, and he was a fair person. He did sheriff work, stuff like that. And people, we want you to run for Congress. Davy Crockett ran for Congress. He went to Congress. He served a couple terms, and he said, "That's it. I'm done. I've served the people. It's time to go back and do something else." I have nothing but the utmost respect for that. Now, that said, you do need legislators who are there longer term, especially in a complicated situation like the United States, where what happens is that, the way the structure of the Senate and House are set up, people get on committees that are responsible for developing legislation or adjusting legislation on specific topics, and they're supposed to have some degree of expertise. Well, you don't develop that if you serve one term and leave. So I have no problem with people spending time. So for instance, if I were to create term limits for the U.S. Congress, I would allow members of the House of Representatives to serve 6 terms. That's 2 years, 6 terms. That's 12 years. That's it. You can develop all the expertise you need in 4 or 6 years and then be the senior graybeard, even if you're in your 30s, for that subject going forward. In the Senate, I would limit it to 2 or 3 terms, maybe 3 terms, 18 years, because the Senate's more of an august body. There's a smaller number of members, and it takes a longer time to develop it. So 3 terms, 18 years. Now, between the 2 of those, that means you could serve for 30 years at the federal level. That's enough. It's enough. Anyway, my thoughts.
And that's the problem with career politicians. They become so out of touch with the general populace because they live in a bubble, totally in a bubble.
Yep.
A privileged bubble as that, and I don't mean privilege in the new modern definition of privilege. It's everything's done for them. They don't have to work for themselves. All their needs are taken care of by the minions that run around in Congress, and their housing is sorted out. The education for their kids is
sorted out. Healthcare,
everything is sorted out. Now, how can you expect someone who's living that sort of protected life in a bubble to understand the plight of the common man?
Yep.
They just don't. They absolutely just don't. So they make assumptions, and then those assumptions become orders, and those assumptions become rules, and eventually we descend into dictatorship where they're not listening to people. They're dictating what they should do and how they should live their life. And so we can see the natural cycle of conservative towards democratic and towards socialism. It's a natural cycle that just keeps going, keeps repeating itself throughout history. And I don't think there's any way to break that cycle. It's just we need to accept that is what happens. But let's get that cycle and that wheel turning quicker so we can get back to a proper conservative of life.
And what happens is they go from serving the people that they've claimed they've gone to serving their own interest and doing things that are contrary to the interests of the body as a whole, body politic. So let me give you a quick example of that. This, forgiving student loans. this whole nonsense. First off, Barack Hussein Obama broke the federal student loan program. Before Barack Hussein Obama, all student loans were made by private banking organizations. But the government explicitly guaranteed that if the student didn't pay the loan, the government would make the payments. So it was a safe bet. As long as a student was deemed by a third party to be financially in need, regardless of their income or family's income, as long as they were in need, they could get a federally guaranteed student loan to go to university. Not based on their grade point average, their quality as a student, just based on financial need, they could get a student loan. Those were issued by private banking institutions. Then Barack Hussein Obama took over the process, and the federal government issues the loans now. So the taxpayer loans money to students, and we loan it on freer terms, and we loan them tens of thousands of dollars more. And what do students do? They drive around in cars and have iPhones and buy pizza every night. Now, I'm embellishing, but you get my point there. So they destroyed the federal student loan program so badly that members of Congress, when they brought in the 5 major bank chief executives from JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, all these others a couple years ago, they were being grilled by people like Maxine Waters in California. Well, how much money did your bank make last year off the student loans? Nothing. What do you mean nothing? Well, we don't make student loans. The federal government took that program over under President Obama 5 years ago. We don't own any student loans. The federal government owns the debt. They didn't even know this. The Congress approved it, didn't even know it. So what happens is, this is what I'm getting at. So student loan for debt forgiveness, first off, in the world, less than 1% of human beings ever get to go to university. It's a privilege to go to university for anybody. Less than 1%. In America, about 25 to 30% of Americans get to attend university at some point. So it's still a privilege, and it still makes you elite in some sense. Why should the taxpayer foot the bill for someone who gets the privilege of going to university to learn an education, which will give you the opportunity to move into a higher socioeconomic stratus, make far more money? The average university graduate makes 2 to 3 times, and as you go up each level of education, more than someone that only has a high school education. Why should the plumber, or why should the cherry picker, why should the carpenter pay to send your kid to school by forgiving your student debt? Not to mention welching on debts and the irresponsibility that does. If you borrow money, you have an obligation to return it. And forgiving debt, because it's popular with young voters to curry votes to get them to vote for you, is disgraceful. But that's what's happening. Biden has not done loan forgiveness. He promised it. It was just an election ploy. Pressure is coming now to forgive debt, which is it's just going to mean those loans are going to be welched on, and we absorb the debt, the taxpayer. It's wrong. Yeah. It's morally bankrupt, and it divides society and also weakens the bonds of society. When you borrow money, you have an obligation to pay it back. You shouldn't get a free ride because now you get to make $150,000 a year as a Wall Street broker because we pay for you to college. I don't make $150,000 a year. It's not my responsibility to make your life easy. It's your responsibility to make your life easy. And that's what happens. They do things that enrich themselves by staying in office that are contrary to the body whole.
Absolutely. And I think it goes even further than that, because it's, forgiving the debt and even making free education free, tertiary education free, it's a dangerous, again, another dangerous slippery slope, because it devalues education, completely devalues it. If anybody can get a degree and get that degree for free, then the dropout rate is going to just drastically increase, because I'd pay for it. I have no responsibility if I do it or don't, if I succeed or not. It's really not any skin off my nose or any dollars out of my wallet.
Right. No skin in the game.
Exactly. So we should not be forgiving the debt. You chose to do this. You chose the career path. You need to take responsibility for it and see it to completion.
Yep.
And then that will improve the standard of graduates as well. They'll be in it for the grades and to succeed, not there just to find a wife or a husband, which it seems to be, but what college or university is actually,
or to become famous on social media because you're protesting fees or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Or be indoctrinated by that whole system into a certain political thinking, which is another problem that our education system faces. Why do you chatted about academics earlier on and giving advice to government. Yeah, they used to. And now I think that advice is still coming from the academic field, but it has a definite political agenda behind it. Yep. And especially in one sort of left-driven agenda. For most of these bills and amendments that happen here in South Africa, there's always an academic group made up of experts professors and so on, and always a representative from the United Nations as well, that drives the policy and makes these policy recommendations to government. How can these people be making these decisions? Why aren't we seeing true objectivity in policy making?
Yeah, I find it comical to see people who have no background in community and regional planning making urban planning recommendations or passing legislation for it without being fully informed, or people coming out with agricultural policies who have no background in agriculture, or people making foreign policy decisions who have no concept of negotiation or diplomacy. It's just, it's hysterical and it's comical, but it happens the world over. You know, Donald Trump came to office and he was castigated and attacked in so many ways, but Donald Trump, whatever you say about him, he gets people. He knows how to push buttons. He knows how to stroke egos. So when little Kim, as he liked to call him, you know, Kim Jong-un from North Korea, was firing intercontinental ballistic missiles, well, they're not quite intercontinental yet, but that was the intent of them, firing them over the airspace and terrestrial space of Japan, that's an act of war. It's not a act of violence. It's not a threat. It's an act of war. If I fire a nuclear, or not even nuclear, but just a missile over someone's airspace and over their land, that's an act of war. Japan would have been in their rights to attack North Korea multiple times. They didn't. They were restrained because they don't want a war. Obama did nothing about it. He never even talked about it. Trump comes in, and first off, he starts attacking him. Little Kim, this guy's dangerous. Got his attention. He got his attention. Hey, you can't call me a little kid. This isn't what was said, you know. But, you know, he's probably like, don't tell me. I don't know what he speaks North Korean anyway. So something like that. So he gets his attention. And then the media lose it. Oh, he's going to cause a nuclear war. And Trump has him right where he wants him. He knows the guy wants his ego stroked. He wants to be seen as a world leader. He wants attention. And that's the easiest way to get him to stop firing these missiles. So what does Trump do? Hey, let's meet. Oh my God, he's going to meet with North Korean dictators. How can an American president do that? No one's ever done that. So he meets with him. And then he meets with him again. Nothing came of it. Nothing was achieved. Well, what were you expecting? All I was expecting is the North Koreans to stop firing missiles over Japanese airspace. Guess what? They stopped firing missiles. Guess what they're doing now? They're firing missiles at Japan again under Joe Biden. That was an effective foreign policy. He had no foreign policy experience, but he got people. And so that's one of the exceptions. Some people just get certain things. Made all the difference in the world. Donald Trump is withdrawing from NATO. No, he isn't. He threatened NATO. Hey, look, if you people are going to freeload and make us pay 3.5% of our GDP, which is a lot of money, almost $1 trillion a year, to defend NATO, and you're not going to put skin in the game, and the Germans are spending 0.7% of their GDP on their defense force, you know, we're not going to play. Oh, America's withdrawing. In the media, he's withdrawing. He was never withdrawing from NATO. He wasn't disparaging NATO. Guess what happened? UK, suddenly 2%, which is the NATO goal. All NATO members are required to spend 2% of their GDP on defense. UK, 2%. Germany, 2%. Guess what? Estonia, Latvia, little countries like that were paying over 2% without any admonition. Poland, Hungary, without any admonition. Suddenly, the lazy, freeloading cheapskates in the West started contributing to it, and more money was available for NATO to conduct operations. Donald Trump gets people, but these freeloading career politicians in a bubble don't get it. That's why you need this fresh blood. And if it takes a 64, 65-year-old with the fresh blood, then that's who it takes. And that's my position on that. What say you?
I agree. And thanks for changing my mind and convincing me otherwise. It's just always enlightening to learn something new. That's great. Thank you. So I don't have much more to say on that, but thank you for that lesson, and I'm definitely convinced now that it's not just young blood then, it's fresh ideas.
Fresh ideas, that's right, yeah.
Fresh ideas is
different approaches. You know what this is? You know what this is? Wait for it. It's diversity. Genuine diversity. It's genuine diversity. Not, oh, look, we got one of them. We got one of these. We got a white. We got an Indian. We got a color. We got a black. We have a homosexual. We have a gay. That's not diversity. That's virtue signaling. Now,
it's diversity of thought
and experience and viewpoint and worldview. That's diversity. That's why we have in well-run companies an ombudsman. You have an ombudsman who is outside, who is objective, who is not part of this bubble of the bureaucracy of how we do business, how we execute, whether it's in government or it's in business. He's not part of that, or she. They sit there and they observe when an issue comes to them and go, wait a second, this is your policy and this is what you did. It's not congruent. It's incongruent. You need to resolve this, and the right answer is this. Well, meanwhile, the people inside the company are wrapped in this bubble of doing things a certain way, and that's why we have ombudsmen. And it's, newspapers used to have ombudsmen, and that's the first question I ask when I talk to a media outlet is, who's your ombudsman? And a lot of them are like, what's an ombudsman? Because they're under the age of 30.
Exactly. Unless your ombudsman is also doesn't have any new ideas and doesn't have any diversity of thought.
That's a risk too. But anyways, well, yikes. Well, we could go forever, so we should probably wrap up in the next 6 minutes or so. But we're off to a raging start, literally, for the new year, Rob. I mean, we've burned the Parliament building down. Now we're reading the Zonda Commission, which a few people have said, to be fair, this was all known. It was all presented in testimony. But again, my position on the report is that it will come with an executive summary coalescing everything they've discovered over the course of this investigation, and it will come with a list of recommendations and also conclusions and recommendations, which is going to be helpful for the layperson. And a layperson needs to pay attention to what's going on with what comes out of Zondo. You can be unhappy about the $1 billion spent. You can be a skeptic and say no one's going to be prosecuted, and you're probably right on both accounts. I won't argue that. I'm not saying Rob. I'm talking people in general. A person could. But the bottom line is that executive summary, to put it in clear terms that the average Joe and Jane can understand, or Drian and Sipo, whatever their names are, and then also conclusions that they came to, because these are learned people, ostensibly, who are jurists, who are going to look at this objectively, and we have a body of evidence now. So that's come out now. We'll see what happens. That's part 1, part 2, and part 3 by February 28th. We're supposed to have them. And as you said, I wouldn't hold my breath, because if you hold your breath on prosecutions, you'll just turn blue and pass out. And that doesn't serve anybody's interest. So we got that. We got the Parliament fire. We got Sleepy Joe blaming Donald Trump for January 6th. We've got a lot going on in the new year. Rob, any thoughts on those things, or whatever you want to say to wrap this puppy up?
Yeah, I think you spot on there, and I think getting these differences of opinion out in the open here between us is actually quite enlightening, because a new truth emerges, and that's exactly perhaps what the whole Zonda Commission was. It took speculation and put it into the space of verifiable facts, and that kills any doubt or attempt at concealing the truth. That throws it right out the window. So from that point of view, it was absolutely worth it, and I appreciate your input in that and changing my mind on that. As far as R1 billion being spent, well, I'll still stand by that one. But the Zonda Commission was definitely a worthwhile exercise. No doubt about that. Parliamentary fire, well, let's see how this plays out.
Exactly.
I think there might be a strong similarity between the 6th of January insurrection and the motivation behind it, and the parliamentary fire in South Africa. Yeah, but let's see. Maybe it's the same sort of ideas and same intended outcome or agenda that's motivated it. Is it a political football that's going to be used later down the line for some political motivation, or bring in some new policy, or who knows? But let's see what happens. And I hope some poor little homeless guy doesn't suffer too much from being the blatantly obvious scapegoat in this issue, despite his explosive device, of which no one knows what it is, no one knows what it was, but apparently it was an explosive device.
Maybe it was a Christmas popper, Christmas cracker.
It could have been, or anything. Oh, who knows? But I think this year is going to be extremely exciting. If it started off this way, there's no doubt it's going to be one to look out for. So buckle up. These shows are going to have a lot of subject matter going forward.
Well, I agree with you, Rob, and I buckle up. I agree, but I'd say buck up, Buttercup, because it's going to be a bumpy ride this year. I predict that by the end of the year, antivirals will be out, and the jab and the hysteria will be gone, because they can't perpetrate this myth much longer. They keep changing the narrative. People are going to eventually wise up. I think this is the year it ends. People either that, or simply out of fatigue, or just simply going to say the hell with what's going on. People how many have we lost? People just natural deaths and not being able to be with our parents and grandparents grandparents and such, or travel, how much damage has been done to the world, how much harm has been done to children not getting proper educations, for infants and toddlers not being able to socialize properly because they can't see faces of adults and learn, nonverbal communication. We will see the impact of these past 2 years and this coming year for the next 4 or 5 decades. The rest of our natural lives, we're going to have to live with the consequences of the stupidity of our political leaders here. But listen, folks, I'm Chris Wyatt in Central Pennsylvania, and this is my co-host Vladimir Ilyich Lenin in Zurich. I mean Rob Hutchinson. Rob Hutchinson there in somewhere in an undisclosed location in the Northern Cape. We'll leave it at that. And,
definitely will.
Yeah, and you've been watching Answer the Question with the Wise Bros. And thanks a lot for tuning in. Be sure to share this with folks on social media if you don't mind. Let them know about this and see if we can't grow an audience just for this program. This is the one, Rob, I'm actually kind of excited and looking forward to. I know based on the comments you share with me that you're really excited about this too. And I think that, I don't know if we have genie in a bottle here for an exciting concept, but the audience seems to enjoy what we're talking about. And let's be fair. I mean, I think both of us have been honest about shortcomings on both sides of the political spectrum and are willing to attack both sides. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think that's what it's about. There's nothing better than political discourse from opposite ends of the spectrum, or even as we so have luckily brought up there, diversity of thought. The best ideas come from a diversity of thought and from differing inputs. What emerges from that is beautiful at the end of the day. So let's definitely keep it up. Let's step it up. Challenge each other as we go, and be open to changing our minds. I think, and try and convince me. I think that's what we should be doing, and even the viewers. Let's get some questions going in the chat there. Throw whatever you had to challenge us, and don't agree. We certainly don't want to be surrounded by people who agree with everything we say, because who knows, we might not be right. Well, Chris might not be right all the time.
No. Let's not be spreading fake news. Ladies and gentlemen, that's fake news. I'm never wrong. It's my error. It's your fault. Okay. My mistake, your error. Anyway. No.
I'm writing that one down.
Yeah. No, I use my error, your mistake. That's I always tell people that. I'm never wrong. It's my error because you made a mistake. No, that's great, Rob. But maybe we'll chat offline. But maybe we should set up a Facebook page or something on social media for this program, and then people can go there and post their comments. We can link to all the streams, and we can also, if we want, you and I can post a relevant news article and put it on there for people to read. We think it's important. I mean, it's something to consider. It won't take a lot of our time to do it. I don't know if Facebook's the best way to do it. Maybe but something like that. Maybe a Getter account or something like that. Yeah, maybe a Getter account, which we both have access to. I don't know how that works if you have 2 people on an account, but you and I will chat about it, and whatever we decide on, we'll let people know. And that way you can pose questions in advance, and, it can help us prepare. Honestly, Rob and I just rock up here with a bottle of bourbon, and we just start talking. No.
Exactly. See where it goes. That's the best kind of conversation.
We might want to prepare in future. I'm just saying.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll drink to that.
There you go. That is not a hard cider, just in case you're wondering.
No.
Yeah, a Telegram channel. Yeah, a Telegram channel. But we could look at that as possible too. Yeah, because then we can control who actually comments on it. All right, Rob. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. It's a pleasure chatting with you again. And on this anniversary of the insurrection, I can't even say it. On this anniversary of the certification of Electoral College results from the 2020 election on January 6, 2021. My best greetings to you and folks in South Africa, and I hope that things go well for you in the new year. And we'll chat next week here on Answer the Question with Rob and Chris.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris. And to you too.
All right, folks, I'm going to close out here. Rob, I'll let you drop off, and then I'll wrap up. If you can hang around, we'll chat for just a second like we did afterwards. Just stay in the chat, and I'll close out the stream, okay? All right, cool beans, folks. That's Rob Hutchinson there, or Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, for those of you who don't recognize him. The founder of the modern Soviet Communist Party. He's still on screen, so I got to help him out there and put him in the waiting room. Okay, here we go. Rob is in the waiting room. There you go now. Anyways, that's Rob Hutchinson, and you've been watching Answer the Question with the Wise Bros, Chris and Rob, here on Indaba, Africa. Thanks a lot for tuning in, folks. I'm really enjoying this segment. Rob seems to be enjoying it a lot, too. I think the audience is enjoying it. Spread the word, folks. Let's get a bigger audience. We had a good audience here today, just like we did last week. But let's let more people know about it, and let's get you to send your questions and comments ahead of time. We'll set up a social media presence of some sort that's low maintenance, and we'll let you know how it goes. All right, folks, take care of yourselves. God bless. Don't forget, here on the channel tomorrow, same program. I might do a night outs tonight, although it's getting a bit late for that. I'll decide here shortly. But tomorrow on Rugby Ascendant, I'll be covering Premiership Rugby for the first time. And then on Saturday, I'll also be covering Premiership Rugby. Apparently, I don't have a source for Curry Cup this year. My former site, Flow Rugby, is not covering Curry Cup games this year, so it doesn't look like I'll be covering Curry Cup. But I will be covering the URC, which will be on Saturday as well. Thanks a lot, folks, and we'll catch you here later. So tomorrow, for Sale Sharks, Faf de Klerk, and other South Africans and Namibians playing for Sale against the Bears from Bristol. That's tomorrow on Rugby Ascendant. Thanks a lot, folks. Take care of yourselves. We'll catch you here later or wherever. Thanks a lot for your support. Cheers, everybody. And my thanks to my co-host, Rob Hutchinson, for his insightful commentary and deep thoughts. Appreciate it. Cheers, folks.